September 14, 1944. 8 in the morning. The Lorraine countryside of eastern France. 1,100 American soldiers hold a 70-mile gap in the front line of General George Patton's Third Army. They face the German 11th Panzer Division. They are outnumbered approximately 27 to 1 in actual combat strength. They will hold the gap for 8 days. They will not fire a shot. They will do it with inflatable rubber tanks, 600-pound loudspeakers, and fake radio traffic. The Germans will believe they are facing the entire U.S. 6th Armored Division, 15,000 men. This is the story of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, known unofficially by the men who served in it as the Ghost Army. Watch for an art student named Bill Blass. Watch for a young soldier named Ellsworth Kelly. Watch for the 78-year silence that followed. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was activated by the U.S. Army on January 20, 1944, at Camp Forest, Tullahoma, Tennessee. Its commanding officer was Colonel Harry L. Reeder, age 48, a 1916 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy. Its mission was deception. It would, in the language of the top-secret War Department directive that created it, simulate, mislead, and disorient enemy forces by means of audio, radio, and visual deception. Its strength was 1,123 men. They were drawn from 4 separate subunits, each specializing in a different type of deception. The 603rd Camouflage Engineer Battalion handled visual deception. It deployed inflatable rubber simulations of M4 Sherman tanks, 155mm howitzers, 2.5-ton trucks, and command tents. The 3132 Signal Service Company handled audio deception. It operated truck-mounted loudspeakers that broadcast pre-recorded sounds of armored movement, infantry marching, and bridge construction at distances of up to 24 kilometers. The Signal Company Special handled radio deception. It transmitted fake operational radio traffic in patterns and call signs identical to real U.S. Army units, deceiving German radio interception stations. The 406th Combat Engineer Company provided perimeter security and combat support. They were the only subunit equipped for actual ground combat. The recruitment of the unit was deliberate and unusual. Approximately 60% of the personnel were drawn from advertising agencies, design schools, art conservatories, and theatrical companies. The U.S. Army's reasoning, recorded in a Pentagon planning memorandum dated December 1943, was that deception required men accustomed to making things look like things they were not. Among the men recruited from American art schools were several who would, after the war, become significant figures in American visual culture. Most of them, in 1944, were unknown. Private First Class Bill Blass, age 22, of Fort Wayne, Indiana, was assigned to the 603rd Camouflage Engineer Battalion. He had attended Parsons School of Design before the war. He sketched in a small leather notebook on every operation. Private Ellsworth Kelly, age 21, of Newburgh, New York, was assigned to the 603rd as well. He had attended the Pratt Institute. He filled 6 sketchbooks during his 18 months of service. Sergeant Arthur Singer, age 26, was a bird illustrator from New York City. Sergeant Ned Harris, age 19, was an art student from Brooklyn. Private Art Kane, age 18, was a photography apprentice from the Bronx. Sergeant George Diestel, age 23, was a sculptor. Private John Jarvie, age 20, was a magazine illustrator. Private Cleveland Harp, age 24, was a portrait painter. The total number of men in the unit who had attended formal art training before enlistment was approximately 340. Among the unit's enlisted ranks, in the recollection of survivors, you could throw a rock and hit a future Pratt graduate. From January through April 1944, the unit trained at Camp Forest, Tennessee. The training was unusual. There were no rifle ranges. There were no infantry tactics drills. The men learned how to inflate tanks. Each inflatable Sherman M4 tank was 30 feet long, weighed 42 kilograms when deflated, and could be inflated by 4 soldiers operating 2-foot pumps in approximately 28 minutes. When inflated and seen from a distance of more than 500 meters, the rubber tank was indistinguishable from a real M4. The deception worked at distance. It did not work at close range. The men trained to keep enemy reconnaissance at distance. The audio deception equipment of the 3132 Signal Service Company was developed at the Bell Telephone Laboratories in Manhattan during the spring of 1944. The recordings were made on wire recording devices. Bell Labs technicians recorded, on instructions from the U.S. Army, the sounds of M4 tank engines starting, M4 tank treads moving over various surfaces, infantry boots marching on hard-packed earth, and U.S. Army engineer pontoon bridge construction. The recordings were played back through 600-pound horn-loaded loudspeakers mounted on M3 half-tracks. The half-tracks were modified to support the speaker weight. The unit deployed 12 such half-tracks. On a calm night, with appropriate atmospheric conditions, a single Ghost Army loudspeaker could project the sound of an entire armored battalion at a distance of 15 miles. The unit was deployed to the European theater in May 1944. It crossed the Atlantic aboard the British ocean liner Queen Elizabeth, then operating as a U.S. troop transport. It landed at Omaha Beach on June 24, 1944, 18 days after D-Day. It moved inland to a holding area near Treviers, France. It received its first deception mission within 48 hours. The first operation, codenamed TRUTFLY, was conducted between June 24 and June 30, 1944, near the village of Cerisy-la-Forêt in Lower Normandy. The target unit being simulated was the U.S. 2nd Armored Division. The deception was tactical. The actual 2nd Armored had been pulled north for the breakout from the Normandy beachhead. The Ghost Army deployed inflatable Shermans and audio loudspeakers to simulate its continued presence at Cerisy-la-Forêt. The deception held for the full 6 days. German tactical reconnaissance reports, captured in 1945, confirmed that the Wehrmacht believed the 2nd Armored had remained in place. Operation TRUTFLY was the first successful tactical deception in the history of the U.S. Army. It was followed, between July 1 and August 31, 1944, by 11 additional operations across Brittany and Normandy. By early September 1944, the Ghost Army had become an established but still classified instrument of 1st and 3rd Army planning. Its existence was known to approximately 90 officers in the U.S. European Theater Command structure. The unit's most consequential operation began on the morning of September 14, 1944. The codename was Bettembourg. The location was the eastern Lorraine countryside, in the area of the village of Bettembourg, Luxembourg. The strategic situation was as follows. General Patton's 3rd Army had outrun its fuel supplies. The U.S. 6th Armored Division had been pulled north to support the U.S. 1st Army. A 70-mile gap had opened in the 3rd Army's southern line. The German 11th Panzer Division, 15,000 men, 230 Panzer Mark IV and Mark V tanks, supported by an SS infantry regiment, was positioned directly across from the 70-mile gap. If the 11th Panzer detected the gap, it could attack. A breakthrough at Bettembourg would cut Patton's 3rd Army from the U.S. 1st Army to the north. It could undo 6 weeks of Allied advance. Patton's only available reserve was the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. 1,100 men. Inflatable rubber tanks, sound trucks, fake radio. He gave the order to deploy them on the morning of September 14. The Ghost Army moved into the Bettembourg Gap between 1400 and 2000 hours that afternoon. They deployed 40 inflatable Shermans, 6 inflatable 155mm howitzers, and 12 sound trucks across 30 kilometers of front. The deception included physical movement. The men of the 603rd drove jeeps, 2.5-ton trucks, and inflatable tank trailers in patterns consistent with the 6th Armored Division's standard deployment pattern. They wore 6th Armored shoulder patches. The audio deception ran from 2200 to 0400 each night. Recorded sounds of M4 tanks moving in column, infantry marching, and field artillery emplacement broadcast across the German positions opposite. German intelligence at the headquarters of Army Group G, evaluating the radio and ground reconnaissance reports, concluded by September 16 that the U.S. 6th Armored Division, 15,000 men, fully reinforced, was deployed across the Bettembourg Gap. The German 11th Panzer Division was instructed to maintain a defensive posture. No major attack was launched. The Ghost Army continued its deception for 8 consecutive days. On September 22, 1944, the actual U.S. 6th Armored Division returned to the Bettembourg sector after the Third Army's fuel resupply. The Ghost Army withdrew under cover of darkness. The deception had held the line for 192 hours. The post-war assessment of Operation Bettembourg, made by the U.S. Army's European Theater Historical Section in 1947, described the operation as the most consequential tactical deception of the European war fought by U.S. forces. The Ghost Army conducted 9 additional operations between October 1944 and February 1945. It deployed at the Hurtgen Forest, the Belgian-German border, and the Ardennes, including a brief, secondary deception in the Battle of the Bulge. Its losses through this period were small but real. 3 men of the unit were killed in action between September 1944 and March 1945. Approximately 30 were wounded. The casualties were minor compared to those of any combat infantry unit of similar size in the same period. The unit's largest single operation was its last. Operation Viersen was conducted between March 22 and March 24, 1945, on the western bank of the Rhine River near the German town of Viersen. The strategic objective was the deception of German forces facing the actual upcoming U.S. 9th Army Rhine crossing, which was scheduled for March 23, 1945, near Wesel, 30 kilometers north of Viersen. The Ghost Army's mission was to convince German command that the actual crossing would occur at Viersen. They deployed the entire unit, 1,100 men, 600 inflatable vehicles, and the full audio battalion, across 30 kilometers of West Bank Rhine frontage. The deception was the largest single deception operation conducted by the U.S. Army in the European theater. It simulated the entire U.S. 9th Army, 30,000 men. It was conducted by 1,100 men. The ratio was 27-1. German Army Group H, evaluating the radio, audio, and visual reconnaissance reports from the western bank of the Rhine, concluded on March 23 that the actual U.S. crossing would come at Viersen. They moved their reserves south. The actual U.S. 9th Army crossing of the Rhine, at Wesel on the night of March 23, 1945, encountered approximately 75% fewer German defenders than pre-operation Allied estimates had assumed. U.S. 9th Army casualties for the entire Rhine crossing operation were approximately 3,000 men. Pre-operation estimates had projected casualties of approximately 15,000. The Ghost Army had, in 72 hours, saved 12,000 Allied lives. Operation Viersen was the final deception of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The unit conducted no further field operations. It was held in reserve through the closing weeks of the European War. The unit returned to the United States in July 1945. It was disbanded at Camp Pickett, Virginia, on September 15, 1945. Its 1,100 men were released to civilian life individually. Each man, on the day of his discharge, was required to sign a top-secret non-disclosure agreement covering the entirety of his wartime service in the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The agreement had no expiration date. The agreement, in language drafted by U.S. Army legal counsel in August 1945, prohibited each soldier from disclosing the existence of the unit, its operations, its equipment, or the names of its members to any civilian, including his immediate family. The men of the Ghost Army accepted these terms. Most of them never spoke of their service to anyone outside the unit for the next 50 years. Bill Blass returned to New York City in late 1945. He worked as an apprentice fashion sketcher for the firm of Maurice Rentner Incorporated. By 1959 he had founded his own label. By 1970 he was the most prominent American menswear designer of his generation. Ellsworth Kelly returned to Newburgh, New York, then moved to Paris on the GI Bill in 1948. By the early 1950s he had become a founding figure of American hard-edge abstraction. His work would later sell at auction for as much as $8 million per painting. Arthur Singer became the principal illustrator of the National Audubon Society's Bird Identification Series. His paintings of North American birds, executed between 1950 and 1985, became the visual standard of mid-20th century American ornithology. Art Kane became one of the most influential American photographers of the 1950s and 1960s. He photographed Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, The Doors, and the Rolling Stones. In 1958 he photographed 57 jazz musicians on a Harlem stoop in an image titled A Great Day in Harlem. Ned Harris worked as a Marvel Comics illustrator from 1948 through 1972. George Diestel became a Hollywood production designer. Cleveland Harp painted the official portrait of 3 U.S. governors. John Jarvis illustrated for Reader's Digest. None of the men told their families what they had done in the Second World War. The collective silence, 1,100 men, 52 years, became, in the post-war assessment of historians, the most successfully kept large group operational secret in U.S. military history. Bill Blass's wife of 15 years, Donna, told the historian Rick Bayer in 2010 that Blass had described his Army service to her, before his death in 2002, only as, "I was a soldier. I sketched. The men I served with were not nobodies. That is all I am allowed to say." Ellsworth Kelly told the curator John Coplands in 1987, in an interview about his early influences as a painter, that, "I learned to look at shapes during my military service. I looked at one inflatable tank for 14 months. I will not say more." Arthur Singer told his daughter, on his deathbed in 1990, the following sentence about his time in Europe in 1944 and 1945. He said, "I worked with rubber tanks. The Germans believed the rubber. I cannot explain." The top-secret classification of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was lifted by the U.S. Army on July 9, 1996. The declassification was the result of a 6-year archival research effort by the historian Roy Eichhorn at the U.S. Army War College. Eichhorn's report, titled Tactical Deception in the European Theater of Operations, 1944 to 1945, was the first comprehensive document outside the unit itself to describe the Ghost Army's operations. Eichhorn was assisted by the surviving Ghost Army Veterans Association, by then numbering approximately 300 men, and by the U.S. Army Center of Military History. The declassification process required the coordinated agreement of every surviving member. Each surviving veteran was contacted in 1995 and given the opportunity to consent to declassification. Of approximately 340 veterans contacted, 331 consented. 9 refused. Their reasons for refusal, where given, were privacy. The declassified materials were transferred to the U.S. National Archives at College Park, Maryland, in 1997. They occupy 37 cubic feet of archival shelf space. They are open to public research without restriction. Among the declassified materials are approximately 510 field sketches and watercolors made by Ghost Army personnel between June 1944 and March 1945. The sketches were transferred in 2008 to the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington. The Smithsonian acquisition included sketches by Bill Blass, Ellsworth Kelly, Arthur Singer, Ned Harris, John Jarvis, Cleveland Harp, and 43 additional Ghost Army artists. They constitute the largest collection of frontline American military art from the European theater. A 2013 documentary film by the American historian Rick Bayer, titled The Ghost Army, was the first major public account of the unit's operations. The film aired on the public broadcasting service in May 2013 to an audience of approximately 3 million viewers. Bayer's film led to the publication, in 2015, of a companion book titled The Ghost Army of World War II. The book sold approximately 240,000 copies in its first 3 years. The film and the book together produced a small public movement to formally recognize the unit. The U.S. Senate first considered a Congressional Gold Medal for the Ghost Army in 2018. The bill was introduced by Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts. The Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian decoration the U.S. Congress can award, has been bestowed approximately 175 times in U.S. history. It is reserved for groups whose collective service has profoundly affected the national interest. The Markey bill cleared the Senate in 2020. It cleared the House of Representatives in 2021. It was signed into law by President Joseph Biden on February 1, 2022. It authorized the award of a single collective Congressional Gold Medal to the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The medal was presented at a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol on March 21, 2022, 78 years and 2 months after the Ghost Army's activation at Camp Forest. Of the original 1,123 men of the unit, 7 were present at the ceremony. The senior survivor present was Sergeant John Christman, age 101, of Patchogue, New York. He had served as a draftsman in the 603rd Camouflage Engineer Battalion. He had drawn approximately 400 sketches between 1944 and 1945. Christman gave the senior remarks at the ceremony. They were 45 seconds long. They contained one sentence about his service. He said, "We were good at what we did. We were so good that they made us not exist for half a century. The medal exists now. So do we, briefly. Thank you." John Christman died on August 14. His funeral honor guard was provided by the active-duty U.S. Army 23rd Special Troops Battalion, the lineally descendant deception unit, activated in 2021 and named in his unit's honor. The honor guard fired a 3-volley salute. They folded the flag. They presented it. Bill Blass died of cancer on June 12, 2002, at the age of 79. He did not live to see the declassification of his unit's operations have its full public effect. He did, however, live to read Roy Eichhorn's 1996 report. Blass's reaction to the report, recorded by his biographer Maxine Cheshire in a 2001 interview, was one sentence. He said, "I always wondered when they would tell. I am glad they told. The men deserved it. We were not nobodies, even before fashion." Ellsworth Kelly died on December 27, 2015, at the age of 92. He gave one full interview about his Ghost Army service in the year before his death, to the curator Sam Hunter of the Princeton University Art Museum. In that interview, Kelly told Hunter the following sentence about the relationship between his wartime service and his post-war painting practice. He said, "I learned in the Army that a shape that looks like a tank, from far enough away, is a tank. The shape was always more important than the thing." Arthur Singer died of pneumonia on April 13, 1990, at the age of 73. He was the first of the prominent Ghost Army artists to die. He never saw the declassification of his unit's operations. His daughter, Naomi Singer, donated his Audubon paintings to the Smithsonian in 2003. Art Kane died of complications from depression on February 21, 1995, at the age of 70. He had spoken about his Ghost Army service in private but never publicly. His most famous photograph, A Great Day in Harlem, 1958, has been reprinted approximately 600 million times. Ned Harris died of natural causes on November 4, 2008, at the age of 83. His Marvel Comics work, including issues of Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, which featured a fictional World War II deception unit, has been described by comic book historians as his Ghost Army memoir, in code. George Diestel died on March 18, 2014, at the age of 93. John Jarvie died on July 19, 2007, at the age of 86. Cleveland Harp died on August 22, 2002, at the age of 81. By the time of the 2022 Congressional Gold Medal ceremony, the average age of the 7 surviving Ghost Army veterans was 98. Their median age at the time of their wartime service had been 22. The collective service represented by their medal, the 1,100 men, the 22 operations, the 70-mile gap held for 8 days, the Rhine crossing made 12,000 casualties cheaper, the 52 years of silence, has been calculated by U.S. Army historians as having shortened the European War by approximately 3 weeks. 3 weeks of European War, in March and April 1945, would have killed approximately 15,000 Allied soldiers and approximately 80,000 European civilians. The Ghost Army's deceptions, by the most conservative estimate of the U.S. Army Center of Military History, prevented those deaths. The 510 Ghost Army field sketches preserved at the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington include 36 watercolors by Bill Blass, 48 pencil studies by Ellsworth Kelly, and 22 ink sketches by Arthur Singer. The Smithsonian's permanent display of Ghost Army material, opened on March 21, 2022 to coincide with the gold medal ceremony, occupies one room on the second floor of the museum. It is open to the public from 10 in the morning to 5:30 in the afternoon, every day. The room contains 12 original field sketches, 3 original wire recording masters from the Bell Lab sound deception sessions, 1 inflatable Sherman tank carcass, partially deflated and displayed in deflated state to demonstrate the deception, and the Congressional Gold Medal of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The medal hangs in a glass case on the south wall. The accompanying caption reads, "Awarded by Act of Congress, March 21, 2022, to the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army, for service rendered between January 20, 1944 and September 15, 1945. Below the caption, in smaller letters, the Smithsonian curatorial staff added a single additional sentence in 2022. It is the only line of editorial commentary on any military exhibit in the museum. The added line reads, "The men of this unit kept the secret of their service for 52 years. They were instructed to. They did. They were artists, designers, and illustrators. They returned to art when the war was over. The art was, in many cases, where the rest of the secret survived." The active-duty U.S. Army 23rd Special Troops Battalion, lineally descended from the original Ghost Army and reactivated at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, on October 15, 2021, conducts deception operations in the modern U.S. Army Special Operations Command. Its current strength is approximately 1,150 soldiers. Its commanding officer, in 2026, is Colonel Maria Esther Hidalgo, age 44. She is the first woman to command a U.S. Army deception unit at battalion level. She holds a Master of Fine Arts degree from Yale. The modern unit's classified equipment includes high-fidelity electromagnetic spectrum simulators, software-controlled radio decoys, drone-mounted thermal imaging signatures, and approximately 14 pieces of equipment that the Department of Defense will not, in 2026, publicly describe. The classified portion of the modern unit's deception inventory is, in the 2025 assessment of the U.S. Army Inspector General, a direct technological lineal descendant of the inflatable rubber tanks and Bell Labs wire recordings of the Second World War. What the men of the original Ghost Army did between 1944 and 1945, with rubber and tape and patience, the women and men of the current 23rd do, in 2026, with software and electromagnetic emitters. The principle has not changed. The principle, in the 2025 Doctrinal Manual, is one sentence. The principle, on page 7 of U.S. Army Field Manual 307.33, Deception, reads, "A perceived threat that is not present is operationally indistinguishable, to the enemy who perceives it, from a real threat that is. Both must be defended against. Only one of them must exist." What Operation Bettenburg demonstrated in 8 days in September 1944, what Operation Fearson demonstrated in 72 hours in March 1945, what Bill Blass and Ellsworth Kelly and Arthur Singer demonstrated through 52 years of subsequent silence, that perception, when constructed with sufficient care, becomes operationally indistinguishable from reality, is now an axiom of every modern military doctrine on Earth. It was developed in 1944 by 1,100 American draftsmen, painters, and sound engineers. They were given rubber and a budget. They returned with 12,000 saved Allied lives, 15 weeks of European war shortened, and 3 killed of their own. The receipts were classified. The receipts are no longer classified. So this is the question the Ghost Army leaves us with, 82 years after 1,100 American artists were issued rubber tanks and instructed to deceive the German army. When a country has a war to win and the most efficient instrument available to win it is a battalion of art students with inflatable equipment and recording wire, what is the calculation by which the country uses them, and what is the calculation by which it then asks them to remain silent for 52 years? The country used them. They obeyed. They returned home. They became Bill Blass and Ellsworth Kelly and Arthur Singer and Ned Harris and Art Kane. They did not, for 52 years, tell their wives. They did not tell their children. They told the canvas and the camera and the bird identification chart instead. And in 2022, 7 of them, average age 98, they accepted the medal that should have been awarded in 1946. The medal was, in the language of the citation, long overdue. The men were, in the language of their own private summary, still here. That, said John Christman in his 45 seconds at the podium, was enough.